think most of us can agree we need some more old Pokemon games on the Switch, right? And actually, not just old games, but some games that can be simply ported to the Switch with no issue. The current cost to purchase some games of Pokemon's past is significantly higher than any current generation Pokemon game. Some are even higher than an entire console outright. Accessibility to old games is becoming more and more infrequent unless you use emulators, which I promised Nintendo I would never use. But not only can a couple of games just be straight ported to the Switch, the Virtual Console on the Nintendo Switch holds the key. We currently have some pretty good and important classics within the franchise available on the Switch thanks to the Virtual Console. Pokemon Stadium and Stadium 2 revolutionized 3D games of Pokemon, becoming quite loved and respected entries in the franchise. Pokemon the Trading Card Game is a really good learning tool for some of the basics of the trading card, game. You can even play Pokemon Snap and take some photos of an Electabuzz chasing an Electrode. But to me, this is just the beginning. What Pokemon games do we really want to play once again on the Switch? Here are the Pokemon games that need to be added to the Virtual Console and to the Switch in general. Number 1, Pokemon TCG Live. Now, I've been quite an open critic of TCG Live as a whole in the past. In my opinion, the Pokemon trading card game is a lot of fun. Not just the collecting element, which I have now fallen back into the rabbit hole of, but the mechanics are very simple to pick up, and it can be very enjoyable. The issue we have is the free version available for playing is missing a lot of features that are needed to make it the best experience possible. This unfortunately becomes even more evident when you compare it to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, which yes also has its own issues, but include a lot of elements and features that make it really successful. I think adding TCG Live to the Switch could really benefit the game as a whole. First and foremost, a lot more eyes will be on the game, that's for sure, and I think a lot more eyes on it could lead to potentially more fixes to keep the game's play rate high. But not just that, cross-platform playability is a really fun and unique element to games like this. So, just as an example, and not to sound like a broken record, I could play a few duels on Master Duel with my Sky Strikers deck on the Nintendo Switch, and then switch to my phone while I'm out watching my football team inevitably throw away another 2-goal lead. Now, the Switch is portable for sure, but it's not always fully practical to bring your Switch everywhere. Your phone, on the other hand, is always with you. The game needs a lot of improvement. For more information on the issues that exist in the game, make sure to check out my video on TCG Live. But while we currently have the trading card game available on the Switch via the Game Boy Color, having an option to play TCG on the Switch against other people similar to Master Duel, I think would be a great benefit, and hopefully along the way we can sort out some of the issues that exist in the game. Number 2, Pokemon Emerald. Okay, so in the interest of fairness and trying not to say every single Pokemon main series game, because otherwise, trust me, every single one would be on this list, and I think that would be boring for everybody. Instead, I'm going to pick only one main series Pokemon game to add to the Switch Online. That doesn't include remakes. And for this list, I picked Pokemon Emerald. Now, why Pokemon Emerald? It's best to start with the main series games that are ruled out and why first, before talking about the main reasons I want to see Emerald on the Switch. First things first, Generation 1 already has an entry on the Switch thanks to Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu. Is that the exact entry that everybody would want? Maybe not, but it exists already on the console in some form. And not to plug myself once again, but the Let's Go games are actually good. Well, you'll have to watch my most recent video to find out the answers on that one. Anyways, we can already play Generation 1 on the current console, so I'm going to rule out all of them automatically. Now, anything past Generation 4 is technically unavailable at this current moment in time. This is due to the access of the consoles available on the Virtual Console. Currently, anything past the Game Boy Advance is not on the Switch, and in fact, neither is the GameCube. So this should technically rule out all of them. But then that would not be as fun because it would only have up to 2003, actually 2005, to pick games from. So instead, let's take a different angle. Generation 4 already has remakes on the Switch available. Again, questionable whether or not it's the most accurate or wanted Pokemon Gen 4 game. In fact, in terms of the remakes, it's probably one of the biggest split opinions in the franchise. But as I said, at the end of the day, you can already play Gen 4 currently on the Switch. Generation 5 is technically next in line for a remake. I have discussed in the past Gen 5 remakes and why you should not want them, but it's important to remember that as a business decision, it's probably the next in line, so bringing Generation 5 doesn't feel right. Pokemon X and Y are very good shouts, and are games that could use a bit more love. But I want to go a bit more nostalgic, maybe for games that have less accessibility. The same goes for Sun and Moon. And this ends up leaving us two. All the Generation 2 games on the Game Boy Color and the Generation 3 games on the Game Boy Advance. So naturally, the third versions of both are the ones up against each other. And picking between the two is difficult. Generation 2 is an incredible era of Pokemon. Getting to play the entirety of Johto and then the Kanto gyms, Completing 16 gyms in one game is still yet to be matched in Pokemon. But Pokemon Emerald has something that makes me choose Generation 3 over Generation 2, and that is the Battle Frontier. For myself and many others, the Battle Frontier is some of the best, most frustrating, most fun, and all-around incredible times during a Pokemon game. It's difficult not to pick Generation 2. I actually got into Pokemon during Gold, Silver, and Crystal, and my nostalgia for them is incredibly high, but the ability to play the Battle Frontier for me just tips it over the edge. It's an incredible experience, and an incredible game, and being able to play it again on the Switch would just be perfect. Number 3, XD Gale of Darkness. Now, I have mentioned XD Gale of Darkness in videos multiple times in the past, and this is mostly down to the current price it costs to purchase these games in real time. 215 Great British pounds for a game on a resale is absolute insanity. And the shame about it is, I feel XD Gale of Darkness is such a fun experience, and it's one of the best experiences for Pokemon you could get on the console back in the day. The marketing for the game is already top notch. There's a Shadow Lugia on the front. The idea of a bit more of an alternate Pokemon story, while still using some of the core elements of gameplay it already has, it's a must-play experience. Both XD Gale of Darkness and Colosseum are fantastic additions to the franchise that can prove to be a bit difficult, but a fun experience. Now, what edges XD Gale of Darkness over Colosseum? Well, besides the massive Lugia on the front of it, this actually comes down to the prices of the games. Gale of Darkness is absolutely extortionately priced, to the point where most people in this current generation will not get a chance to play it unless they use emulator. I would be very surprised to see somebody use £215 to buy this game, and it's a shame really. The game's actually a lot of fun and I feel adds a lot to the franchise. Number 4, Pokemon Battle Revolution. Now, this game for me, it's memories. I feel like Generation 4 in general was a very fun time. We had Pokemon Platinum to follow on from Diamond and Pearl. Heart Gold and Soul Silver was so fun, and during this period of time on Nintendo Wii we got Pokemon Battle Revolution. I never realised how enjoyable these games could actually be until I started playing it when I was younger. The game, like Pokemon Stadium, features 3D graphics of Pokemon, but is now much more refined, to the point where Pokemon would actually have their own animations for moves that they did. Not just that, it also had a connectability to the DS games which made it a fun element. It's a bit more of a simple take on Pokemon. It doesn't feature a story like XD Gale of Darkness or Colosseum, but for me this is a proper nostalgic drive. It just reminds me of how simple Pokemon can be, just Pokemon battling. Now, I want to throw it over to my comments. What Pokemon games would you like to be ported to the Switch? Any of the 4 on this list? Can you think of any others? Make sure to like and subscribe as it really helps out my channel. You'd be surprised, but a lot of people who watch aren't actually subscribed. See you guys.